Bruce, you played for Luton, Derby, Everton and Aston Villa. Why so many clubs?
Well, I think there's certain reasons, Bernie, why people move in their careers. And in the period that I was playing, the reason that I moved from one club to another was purely ambition. I began as a young 15-and-a-half-year-old at Luton and served them from 1963 to 1969. And the club was still in the third division at that stage. And I just felt it was time to move on. Actually, I didn't ask to leave the club. I was quite happy at Luton. It was basically a hometown club. And one day the manager, Alex Dock, came to see me on the training ground pre-season and just said that they'd accepted an offer from Aston Villa. And they had to meet Tommy Docherty and Arthur Cox, who was the coach there, in Northampton. Well, I couldn't drive, didn't have a car. And they took me up to Northampton. And I met the manager, who was Tommy Docherty. And we agreed to do, I mean, the transfer deals in those days only took 5 minutes. Sat across the table, they told me what they were offering.
How things have changed.
Oh, absolutely. I said, great. And I went to Villa, which was in the second division. And I knew their gates were in the region of 40,000. It was potentially a big club. And so this was an ambitious move, going for ambition. And then I had 5 years at Aston Villa, which is a great football club, and I enjoyed it at Villa Park. But the first year we were relegated into the third. And it took us 1 season to get back out. And then after 5 seasons, we were still in the second division. And I was getting to the age of 26, and I just felt I had to make a move into the old first division to test my capabilities in that division before I finished my career in football. And I felt that if I hadn't moved at that time, at 26, maybe a couple of years later, I might have been too old to move. And the management was superb. Vic Crone, Ron Wiley was superb. Basically told me just to continue playing, work hard. And in the February of '74, again called off the training ground, told me they accepted an offer from Derby County, who were one of the top clubs in that period. And I went along to meet the manager, who was Dave Mackay, another Scotsman, and again signed immediately. And so I went into the first division. And Derby were third in the table at that time I joined, and they hadn't won a game for 9 matches following the dismissal of Brian Clough in October. And but it was a big club, a football town, a football city. And then after a couple of seasons, 2.5 years possibly, Dave Mackay lost his job, and the first move I made without ambition was to Everton. They weren't any bigger necessarily at that time than Derby County were. And I moved across to Everton, but only stayed a year, and then came back to Derby. I really was unsettled at Everton. I was in an unsettled period in my life. I'd been very settled for all the previous years, spent 11 years at 2 clubs, 2.5 years at Derby, then the unsettling effect of managers leaving. And we had a team that was capable not only of winning the championship, which we did do, but the following season we finished 4th and semi-final in the Cup. And actually might have won the double that year, very close to doing the double. And I felt that the change of manager was wrong, and I was now 29 years of age. The club accepted an offer from Everton. I thought, well, if you want to part company with me, I'll go. So I went, but I came back and spent another couple of seasons. So all those moves, actually, the first 3 were purely ambition. There was no other reason for the moves.
You won 24 international caps for Scotland. Who was opposition in your first game?
It was Portugal at Hampden Park, and we won 1-0. And actually, a little story to my selection for the national team. The season had ended, Derby had a particularly good season, and as is usual with some of the clubs, we went away to Calamalore, a place you know well, and we were there for just over a week, enjoying ourselves and relaxing at the end of a busy year. I came back, I was at home, and the telephone rang, and it was the manager, Dave Mackay, on the phone. And this is how the conversation went. "Hello, Bruce, how are you?" I said, "Fine, boss." He said, "How would you like to play for Scotland?" I said, "Oh, I'd love it." He said, "Well, you have to ring a Mr. Donald, as in duck." So I got on the phone to Mr. Donald in Scotland, and he said, "How would you like to come and join us? We got 5 games, a friendly match, the home internationals, and a European Championship game in Romania. So I said, great. So I joined them up in Scotland, and to my surprise, I was selected for the first game, because I thought, well, 5 games, if I get a game for Scotland, that'd be fantastic. But I got picked for the first game against Portugal, and that was a great match. We had Dalglish, Danny McGrain, Stuart Kennedy, Sandy Jardine, I think Eddie Gray may have played, Asa Hartford. I mean, it was just great. Yeah, and it was a great feeling to go to Hampden and make your debut, get a win. I got subbed after about 70, 75 minutes. The San Miguel was pouring out my calves.
I didn't think you'd play.
Well, I didn't. On the quiet, we had a few parties on that trip. But about 75 minutes, and then I thought, well, great, I've enjoyed it. But then I played in all the other games, the other 4 games, and actually got my first goal down at Wales playing against Wrexham. And it was great. I mean, it was really, really fantastic, and something that I'd always wanted to do. And you know, the feeling of actually putting on the blue jersey and representing your country is probably the best feeling you'd ever get.
You played in Captain Scotland in the 1978 World Cup finals in Argentina. What went wrong? Lost to Peru, drew with Iran, and you went and beat, you know, Holland. The Dutch were a good side at the time. You beat them 3-2. Archie Gemmill scored a tremendous individual goal.
Well, actually, I don't blame anybody for it, because I felt it was a good experience, a tremendous learning experience. For those who came away from Argentina 78, not having learned from what took place, would be fools. Under Willie Ormond, if I can go back just a little bit, and I'll try and be as brief as possible, under Willie Ormond, the previous manager, he put together a team and a group of players that was more like a club team. Every time we turned up for our meetings and our matches, it was invariably all the same players. There might be the odd addition, i.e. Andy Gray joined us on an occasion, and somebody else would come in the squad, but we actually got to know each other's players so well. And then he left, and Ali McLeod came along, and there were changes in the personnel, and I think the changes, in a way, just disrupted the continuity of the team. I don't think people do that on purpose. I think we have our own ideas of who we like to play in the team and who we don't. But it did disrupt, and our year, not our year, just a little period before going away, it wasn't as harmonious as a group as you know it should be in a team. Whereas in those early days, I think I'd only lost 4 games in something like 20 internationals leading up to the World Cup. And that was a pretty fantastic record. I think I ended up with 60 defeats in 24 games, something in that region, which is reasonable at international level. But most certainly the changes, and also there was a debate on money. And when you start having debates on money and bonuses, and you're actually at the finals, then nobody's going to win. And I think it kills morale. And that took place. The facilities weren't up to standard. The training pitch wasn't up to standard. So there were some areas that we look back on that weren't conducive to actually having a good environment and team. But it was a good experience. I've got to say that. We failed to qualify for the next stage on goal difference. It wasn't points at all, it was just a goals difference. So we were very close to getting through. And had we beaten, I think we had to beat Holland 3-1. As against 3-2. 3-1, we were through into the next round. So it was pretty close. But a good learning curve, and something that you take with you in the long term when you go into management.
Was it always an ambition to become a manager? You know, who were your role models?
I think so. For as long as I can remember, as a player, especially living in the Midlands, and whilst I was at Birmingham, whilst with the Villa, I used to go to a lot of games. I'd go to Birmingham City midweek, I'd go to Derby, I'd go to Coventry, West Brom, Wolves, and I would ask my managers to obtain guest room passes for me for half-time or for before the game. And I used to go in and want to talk to the managers. And I had the great opportunity to go in at West Brom one night and meet Bill Shankly and Ruben Bennett. And this is the question I asked, because I wanted to gain some information. I said to Bill Shankly, "Excuse me, Mr. Shankly, can I ask you a question?" He stood there and he said, "What is it, son?" I said, "Well, when you're buy players. Obviously, they've got to have talent, they've got to have ability. But is there something else you look for? And he said, yes, son. They must play 42 games a season. And I've never forgotten that. I don't buy players who only play 20 games a season through injury or suspensions. And so going into those rooms and listening, talking to those managers was invaluable. You get coaching tips, you get management tips, and they've got to stay with you and register with you. So that was, and so I'd be 24, 25 years of age, maybe younger, going to these games and spending my energy in the evenings out watching football, which I loved and enjoyed. And I suppose that was the beginning for me.
You came to Borough as coach in 1986 under the then manager Roy Madron. How did that come about?
Well, I'd gone back out to Seattle in '85 to...
You like that in Seattle, don't you?
I love Seattle. I've been 3 years in Seattle, and it's a fantastic city, a great place to live. And the North American Soccer League, as it stood, had folded around about '84. And some friends wanted to resurrect and keep football alive in America. And they asked me to go out and set up a league down the West Coast. So I went out along with people like Jimmy Gabriel and one or two others, and we set up a league which encompassed Vancouver, Victoria, Seattle, San Jose, Portland, Los Angeles, San Francisco. And we set this league up and kept soccer running. And we had soccer camps and day camps and ladies teams and regional teams. It was a tremendous project. And it was important to keep the American scene running. And I spent a year out there. And basically, the adrenaline stopped because there was no real competition. United play Liverpool, this competition, the adrenaline flows. We didn't have the competition. So I came back in the October, November of that same year. And I was working as a scout for Arthur Cox at Derby. And then I saw the application in one of the national papers for a coach to Middlesbrough. I applied for it, I had an interview. Before I had the interview, I drove down to see Middlesbrough play at Brighton. I think it was about a 3-1, 3-3. You played in behind the front two.
You must have been in front.
And I went down to have a look, so I thought, well, I better have a look at the team before I go to the interview. Had the interview. Willie offered me the job on the Monday, and that was how really I got the job at Middlesbrough Football Club in the first place.
A month after joining, Willie was sacked, you became manager. Did that come as a surprise?
Well, a little bit of background to Willie leaving. I think it was going down to Portsmouth, and I think we lost down at Portsmouth. And Willie had said to me on the way back that he was under pressure, and he had 3 games to get results. And he said, well, if I don't get the results because I love the club, I might go. And I persuaded him not to jump, not to walk out, not to resign, because it had been told to me in the past, even though I was just in the beginning of management, that you don't resign from jobs. And then after one of the home games, he was sent for, well, we were both sent for by the chairman, Alf Duffield at the time. We went up to the manager's office, might have been the secretary's office, and David Thorne. And the chairman asked me to go next door while he had a chat to Willie. And I was standing next door, and 5 minutes after standing there, I thought, well, to hell with this, I'm not going to stand here. And I went back down to the dressing room. And then another member of staff came up half an hour later and said, the chairman would like to see yourself, Steve Spout and Donna Reardon in the boardroom. And we went up to the boardroom, and he explained that Willie had left, and he said that, I'd like you 3 to look after the team. And I basically said, well, with respect, I don't see it proper that a player should be involved with the team. And I said, I think Don should leave the room. And so Don left the room, and he just asked me to take over and look after the team in the interim period, and that's really what happened. And the rest, as they say, is history.
We were relegated that season. Was the job bigger than you anticipated?
No, I didn't anticipate anything at all. I came in with an open mind to what had taken place at the club. I wasn't fully aware of the finances of the club. When you're a coach, you just concentrate on working with the players. You don't get involved in any of the financial side. You leave that to the management and the board of directors. and there was no money to spend. And then we had a kind of a bad freeze period where we didn't play for some time. And I think we went up to Scotland to play Celtic in a friendly match. And it gave me a chance to get to know some of the players. And we had a staff of about 30 odd players. It gave me a chance to get to know some of the players a bit better. And then came the end of the season. And again, my position was not necessarily that as a manager. I had no contract, although I was probably a caretaker at that time. But we had to make decisions on players. And of the 34 players that I think we had on the books, or 35, I released 20.
You'd like to say I wasn't one of them.
You weren't one of them. No, we hung on to you. And when we look back, and I brought Danny Vigara in, I think. No, maybe Danny Vigara in at that time. I think I brought Danny in first. We look back on the 14 to 15 that we kept in the short space of time that we had the team to work with, and we don't think we made a mistake on any of them. Not one. We kept the right ones, and we released the right ones. And the only player who actually went on to do better things that we released was David Curry. He actually left Middlesbrough on a free and went to Darlington. But then from Darlington, I think he went off to Barnsley and then Forest, yeah. So he went on and done very well for himself. The rest basically went by the wayside. So, but there's some good lads now. I mean, we didn't release them because they're all bad players. There was different reasons: age, lack of desire, lack of drive, too young, too old, good characters, but not enough ability. So there's different reasons why managers release them. And the ones that we kept, we looked at their shirts. We had a saying. We looked at the shirts, but we didn't look at the number on the shirt. We used a $sign on the shirt. And we looked at them and said, do they have a market value? And we looked at them and said, yes, they do. So you might have played in a 7 shirt, but we didn't look upon it as a 7. We looked upon it, did you have a market value? In our opinion, yes. Did Peter Beagley have a market value? Yes. Mowbray, Pallister, Cooper, Kernigan, R.G. Stevens, yeah. Everyone had a pair. They all had a market value on their shirt. That's why we kept them. The others, we felt, didn't have a market value.
Club went into liquidation. The players we received were wages from the town hall. Were you paid at that particular time?
No, none. In fact, we were in the liquidation. I went off on holiday to the Calamalore. I was in the hotel with my wife and children, and the provisional liquidator rang me, and he said that I have some news for you, and it's not necessarily good news. I'm afraid we're going to have to terminate your employment. Or you can stay with the club and work with the club or for the club without wages. So I was standing on reception in the hotel with a San Miguel in my hand. I was 3 days into my holiday of 14 days. I thought to myself, well, hang on a minute. You know, I may as well enjoy the rest of the holiday. And I just said to him, I'll work for nothing. Because nothing else to do. Except enjoy my holiday. And I went back, he said fine. I went back downstairs, carried on as normal, enjoyed the rest of the holiday, and came back. And that's exactly what happened. And just prior to going on holiday, I had a call from Steve Smelt, the physio, to say he was leaving to go to Sunderland. And Danny Vigara rang me to say he was leaving to go to Sheffield United. So we'd lost the staff as well. But I couldn't blame them for leaving because there was no guarantees. And Toddy, who I'd taken out of a job working for Thorpe's Brewery to join us just prior to that, he wondered what the hell was happening as well. So he was out of work as well, basically. So none of us were getting wages. And the worst part of it all, really, was for Toddy and Barry Geldart driving you lot down to the town hall and having to confirm that you're all players and sign you in for your wages because, they saw you picking up money and they weren't able to pick up wages at all. But at that time, I paid the lodgings of all the YTS players in the club to the landladies.
Out of your own pocket?
Yeah. And I paid the wages of the kit managers and the repairs to the cars of the kit managers. There's a lot of things that I did financially, which eventually I got back from the club when the club resolved itself. But I didn't know whether that was going to happen or not. But I just felt it was important to keep some people on board. It was important to keep the landladies' incomes going into them and the YTS's wages going in and so forth. And to be fair to the club, they did reimburse me when everything was settled eventually. some of the things that happened to the players were wrong, and for those players who wanted to move on, so be it. But without the players who stayed, there wouldn't have been a Middlesbrough Football Club as we know it today. The homegrown players and yourself and Archie Stevens, they stayed. They continued to support each other and work for the club, because the club was their love. And it wouldn't be the Middlesbrough Football Club as we know it today had they all decided to get up and move. There wouldn't have been a professional team. We'd have had to start in the Conference League or somewhere else. So, you know, Middlesbrough's here because of the players.
So what do you remember about the liquidation scenario?
Oh, there's so many stories. Ah, dear. I think the worst one was the radio. All the lads coming in and saying, well, we're here on the radio, we're going bust today. And I can remember saying to the group on several occasions, until you hear it from me, we're surviving and we're going on. You just concentrate on your training and we're going on. I remember one day at Longlands College, when we were training at college, and I wasn't happy with the way training was going. I think it was on a Thursday. And I called all the players together, and of course you lads were getting paid and Toddy and I weren't. And I said, look, we're not here to just muck about and this, that and the other. And, you know, as far as we're concerned, you know, you make your mind up, you know. We're going home for the weekend, and we'll see you. You can do what you want. We'll see you Monday. And I think you all got together, went in the local park, and trained together. And I think those sort of things brought you back together, tighter. But it started off in the boardroom with a deficit of about 800,000 and a million, and 1.2 and 1.6. And it seemed to be going up. Every time you opened the cupboard, a skeleton fell out, and the money went up. But I'd made a conscious decision that I wasn't going to get involved in any way, shape or form with regards to the finances of the club. My whole and total effort was going to be focused into the team, and it's probably the best period of my life for working with players. I didn't have to worry about buying players or doing any homework or office work. I just focused it on the team and worked with the team to gel a spirit, and that in itself was great. And the experience that I raised earlier in the conversation with regards to Torquay was the experience that had lasted me for the future. And I remember changing in the, I don't know what you call it, in the equipment room at Longlands College. You chaps were changing in the dressing room. Toddy and I changed in the top end in the cupboard. And Toddy was going, bloody hell, this is diabolical. And I said, Toddy, I had it worse at Torquay. This is not as bad as Torquay. And so every day we start, we're the brightest guys that you've ever met. Although we might moan and groan in behind the scenes, when we face the boys, they feel great, we're brilliant, we're fantastic, we're upbeat every day. Yeah, we preached it. Yeah. Because we felt if the players saw us down and low, then it might transmit itself to one or two, and we wouldn't allow that. And actually I've carried that through in all my career in management, so it was a good sign. A lot of good days actually, they bring back a lot of happy memories.
Did you always have faith that the club would actually be saved?
Yeah, I did, because historically, other than clubs being re-elected or failing to get re-elected and going out of business around the league, everyone survives. And there've been one or two other clubs that have been difficulties, but yeah, I believe it. There's always someone going to come along and help a club. It's a big football club. Middlesbrough had great traditions, and one of my, if not my favourite all-time great player, Wilf Mannion. Yeah. I was living in Cambridge when Wilf came at the end of his career and played at Cambridge United. So here I am at a club where one of my heroes played. I couldn't see it going under. I mean, they had great tradition. We had good players, good group of young players. And Steve Gibson, who was young, still young now Steve, but young, 27, 28 at that time, was a go-getter, was hard-nosed, was determined to take the bull by the horns and go forward. Couldn't see it going under. And so, as I say, I just focused my whole attention into the players and making sure that they were prepared in readiness for the start of the season, which we were.
Studies about that with Bruce Rioch